Later, he and another guy, what was his name? Jack something. They called him Slim, because he was a slender guy. They became mechanics, auto mechanics for, what's his name? The guy who, he raced in the Indy 500 and won, and his brother Dick Rathmann, that was raised near me. His father was a butcher when we were young. You know, this is high school stuff. And his father my mom used to go to him and get buy meat, because he had a butcher shop, not very far from where we lived. And had two boys, Dick and Richard.
You sure it wasn't Jim?
Jim, I mean. Jim and
Rathmann.
Dick. Huh?
Jim Rathmann?
Yeah, and Jim Rathmann, and they used to go up to Saugus and race Model Ts, is where they started.
They lived in your neighborhood?
Yeah. They started with Model Ts that they'd go up over the pass in the desert towards Bakersfield, and there was a track up there at Saugus where they'd race, this is in high school, where they'd race these cars round and round. And they had a speed trap there too, where they would run fast. I ran through the trap in a 32 Model A once, but that I had. But he got real good, and then he ended up as an Indy racer, but he had to change his name. His brother, Dick Rathmann, was older, but Jim had a car to race in the Indy, and he was not old enough to race. He was only 17, I think, and you had to be 18. But his brother was 2 years older, so he switched names. He was really born Dick Rathmann, and his brother was Jim, but they switched names so that Jim Rathmann could race in that race and be legal. And later on, his brother became a race driver and raced in Indy too, and they both raced in Indy. And Dick won the Indy. I don't remember how many times he raced, but he won Indy. Then he moved down here. And
he has a dealership.
Yeah, Nick Basura, well, he moved to Miami first and had a speed shop. Nick Basura and this guy Jack, and they were his mechanic then, and they were his mechanic when he was racing in Indy. And if I remember, I don't think they followed him down there, but he was down there, and I bought a car from him down there, and I told him, I said, you ought to go up there to the Space Center. There's a lot of guys up there who like fast cars. He was racing some other midgets then too.
And did he, when you were buying this car, how long when?
And then he got
how old were you when you were having this conversation?
With him down there?
Yes.
Before Mom and I were, I guess we'd just gotten married or before we were married.
So you were in your 30s?
Yeah, I was in my 30s then, not much later.
He knew who you were? He recognized you?
Oh, sure. I went down and talked to him. He sold me a real hopped up Chevy, what was the name of that Chevy, June? Was she sleeping? I forget the name of the Chevy.
I think she went into the other room.
Was all hopped up and had a heavy-duty clutch on it because of an Impala.
Okay.
A regular Impala. It was a touring car, wasn't it?
Right.
It was a four-door, I think, Impala. It may have been a two, but I think it was a four-door. And I told him, and he was in midget sort of racing, and he came up here and he did some races at Daytona or somewhere. And then the next thing I knew, he had a dealership up here, Chevy sponsored, because he was racing Chevys, I think, when he was racing in the Indy races.
Right.
But the people that Bill Parks was a good friend and worked with my dad. When my dad worked in Los Angeles in the oil business, worked out there delivering gasoline. He worked with my dad. And he had some other friends in that neighborhood I was raised in. And my cousin Louie, he was a really good body and fender man. He could really was really good with metal. He could freeform it, And he was building Indy cars. The tail cones and all this stuff, he was building them and repairing them. And Bill Parks was associated with the guy that was in the Indy racing, and this other guy was they were building Indy race cars, and I went up there where they were building the Indy race cars with him. In Los Angeles, they were building these. And Dick Rathmann, I don't know how he got into it, but he was with somebody else. And so in that neighborhood, there was quite a few people who were somehow associated with building Indy cars. I used to go watch the races when I was a teenager primarily.
Is there a racetrack near your neighborhood?
Yeah, they're not near, but there was one out. What the hell the name? I'm trying to think of the name of the racetrack. Ascot Speedway. That was the name of the racetrack. Bank track. They had more like midget races there. And there was a gasoline called Gilmore that used to sell the gasoline to them. And they did a lot of advertising there for race, and they must have furnished some of the money for the race cars. I saw a guy, one race car go, it was a small, rounded track, you know. I saw one guy go over the bank, a steep bank, went right over the bank and disappeared on the other side.
Wow.
But Gilmore Gasoline, they started the first singing commercial.
Television commercial?
Huh?
A radio commercial.
Radio, they never had television
Right.
then. Just
Right.
I can't remember it. Gilmore Gas, put it in your engine and step upon the gas. There's no one on the highway that you can't pass unless they're using Gilmore 2, unless they're burning Gilmore 2. That was the name of it. And they had a lion as a symbol. A Gilmore lion was their logo, I guess you'd call it
Right.
nowadays. But they sell Gilmore Gas.
Exxon had the tiger.
And it was green, huh?
Said Exxon had a tiger. Are you sure you're not confused?
No, I know I'm not confused. I remember the Gilmore Gas. How could I remember that song that long ago and be confused?
That's
Catherine?
pretty good.
That was before World War II when
Yeah.
they started. That they also had those Burma shave signs too, scattered all over them. You'd go on a trip in a car, every so often they'd have a series of Burma shave sign, and it would be some
What
sort
kind
of
of
a
sign?
poem. Burma shave. It was shaving for
Okay.
shaving your face, you know. And you'd read those signs, and they would end up use Burma shave. And I don't remember.
Well, it's like a whole series of signs.
Oh yeah,
making a
with different
sentence.
poems, you know. You'd have about maybe 6 or 7 signs in a row, the starting, and then end it with use Burma shave, you know. And it was really neat. All over the United States, I think they had the Burma shave signs. And Burma shave, you know, in those days, my dad had a shaving mug in his thing, and that's how I started, I guess. And a straight razor. He had always he used a straight razor. I guess he finally went to a safety razor, but I never used a straight razor, I don't recall. I was too scared. And I wasn't old enough either. By the time I was old enough to shave, they had developed a safety razor, Gillette, I think.